All right, I'll call the Lunenburg Finance Committee meeting to order. In accordance with requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised this meeting is being recorded and broadcast over a Lunenburg Public Access channel and Facebook Live. We also have a Zoom meeting. You can find the Zoom in the calendar at lunenburgma.gov. And with that, can we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, anyone have any announcements? All right.
Recording in progress.
All right, sorry, for those on Zoom, who I think are now joined in, Town Hall was locked when we got here. It took us a little while to get in, so we started a little bit late, and my apologies. With that, any public comment from the public? All right, and seeing no hands raised, any public comment from the committee? Okay. So our first order on the agenda tonight is a scheduled meeting with the Budget Task Force to go over some of their findings, especially ones that pertain to Finance Committee and our recommendations and adjustments that we would make throughout the upcoming budget season and maybe even longer term. So are you two both doing it?
Yeah. I don't think we have a quorum, just three of us.
Okay.
I think we need four. So,
It's fine.
do you want to,
Sure.
you didn't get to talk.
I talked plenty on Tuesday, but that's fine. So the Budget Task Force provided a list of recommendations. We met up for 5 months, very in-depth talks, and the data analytics provided by individuals from town, department heads. We talked to the assessors department. We talked to almost everybody and anybody you can think of. So with that being said, this list of recommendations was sent out. Tony provided an update on Tuesday. However, I don't speak as well as Tony. I'm not going to try to fill his shoes, but I'll do the best I can. So within these, we have a list of 20 recommendations provided. So I'll just go through the list. As we've gone through these items, we tried as best to analyze the gaps within town. There are several issues financially that the town is facing down. So I'm just going to go through the list of recommendations one by one, and you can ask any questions that either one of us can address. First recommendation, consolidation of town accounts. As I came aboard, and as we went through the process, it's apparent the town accounts is astronomically large. It's complicated, which it doesn't need to be. So consolidated town accounts is another recommendation down the line regarding the chart of accounts, but this recommendation, number one in particular, is regarding our bank accounts and our investment funds. So here, in order to achieve the highest yield possible, we set forth a warrant this past special town meeting for the prudent investment rule. So this had already been passed. So the next step within this is we are waiting, on the finance department, we are waiting for the new town manager to update our financial investment policy. And I don't know when's the last time that's been reviewed, but it's with this new rule in place, we need to update and consolidate our accounts in order to achieve the highest yield possible for the town, as well as maximize our revenue at the end of the day. And that investment policy really should be reviewed once a year. You know, there are updates to the markets, to whatever have you, but that's the recommendation here. There's
May I
no,
ask on this one, and maybe all of them?
Sure.
One question I would have is this something that town manager can just do on their own? Is this select board driven, or does this start to require, you know, a town meeting?
well, the financial investment policy does need recommendation, I believe, from the Finance Committee. So once that's updated and reviewed, the Finance Committee should receive a presentation from myself and also the new town manager, as well as this, since it's a policy change or an update, it should go to Select Board as final approval with recommendation, hopefully from FinCom. At that point, we would address management from town, myself and the new town manager, and also the treasurer collector would make our recommendations. With feedback from the FinCom, we'll make the adjustments and the final presentation to the select board to vote and approve. So I'm assuming that's the standard process. Any questions?
Nope, thank you.
Let's see.
Double-sided.
Oh, okay. So the second recommendation, which I talked a little bit about earlier, is a targeted diagnostic audit. So our chart of accounts is massive. It's overly complicated. As I'm going through and as I closed out fiscal year '24, there's a lot of accounts that should be consolidated, there's departments that should be consolidated. It's just, it doesn't need to be so confusing, and trying to find information from 2015 is very difficult unless you were here during that time. You'll say, oh, I remember, this is what happened. But if you look into the chart of accounts, it's very difficult to do a deep dive in that sense. So, with that being said, to have this diagnostic audit, the goal is to identify any missing crucial and financial information for the town, and also to streamline what the financials look like in order to create a better picture for the citizens that live here. So they should be able to easily understand and pinpoint what they need and what the town needs and what they're trying to get out of that information. It shouldn't be this this overly complicated digging through process, which really is what's happening right now. And also, you know, we do our annual audit. Our books are in good shape, but this is more of a deep dive to see if there's anything, because I don't know if you know, but if you do an annual audit, it's more of a higher level picture. Are we going through, you know, we're doing mass general laws, are we, is there anything funny going on, that kind of thing, but this is more of an in-depth targeted audit. This is, we have an estimated value. We don't have one at this time. We're not sure. We would have to build that up to what our request would be. We want to make sure it's targeted. We don't want to make it overly complicated where it's taking a long time to process. But this will be a one-time cost to the town. This won't be a cost savings. Any questions, concerns?
Would you periodically do this as well, or do you think this is one and?
I personally would do this one time, and then do an annual review of what's needed, and maybe within 5 years possibly think about doing it if there's any areas of concern. But as we clean everything up, everything will be easier to manage, look at, and review. I don't feel like this would be an ongoing issue. It's just this one time. It's going to be really a deep dive.
Okay. Do you have an estimate of what that would cost?
At this time, no. We have to kind of look at exactly what type of firms provide this kind of work for municipalities in particular. I know, there's audit firms that do this kind of work, but I need to take a deeper dive as to what, not only just the chart of accounts, but how far back, what to look for, that kind of thing, so we don't send them on a goose chase and they don't know what they're looking for. So as part of that recommendation, and I would love feedback from the FinCom specifically, because I've been here 10, 11 months, so it'd be more what do you think we should go on that route? More of a conversation for later on.
Do you think there's any grants from the state to do this kind of thing? I know there were grants for like the policy. There was one that came up with our Collins scoring, and there were some of those ones that...
There may be federal or state grants available. That's actually been one of the routes I've been going down. There's operational grants, I think, we may be able to target. But without knowing the cost yet, it's hard to pinpoint the amount. Sure.
When you're taking bids, do you have a process of how many bids you want to look at to provide the service? What's the process that you guys use for that? And where does the money come from?
Well, depends on what you're looking for. So anything under 10,000 doesn't require a bid. Anything 10 to 50,000 requires 3 quotes per state statute. You don't need to go out to public bid, but you can. Anything over 50,000, you have to put out to public bid. That requires, an entire RFP package to be built and so on.
And who makes the final decision on the accepted bid if there are bids out?
The town manager makes the final call. And I'm assuming at that point, if it's something like this, the FinCom would be involved as well.
Sounds good.
All right. Recommendation number 3 kind of goes hand in hand with the first one. It's the prudent investment rule. We had already voted at a special town meeting. This, I think, depending on the market, it would yield anywhere from 15,000 to 250,000 in return value. It's not a mechanism of putting the town funds at risk. It's just diversifying the portfolio. So, the state has 20 safe stocks. This just broadens that beyond that. But we have, our trust funds are managed by Bartholomew, and they do a good job managing our risk, so we don't end up with a problem.
And for Tanya's sake, we had a presentation on this, probably at town meeting, but also to FinCom over the summer. So it'll be on tape if you...
Yep, awesome, thanks.
How am I doing? All right. You want to talk about CPA? Because you're more...
Yeah, sure, I can talk about CPA. So CPA, Community Preservation Act. This has come up in town to vote, for a vote twice before. 2002, 2007 was voted down, or didn't pass the vote. And then it came up most recently in 2020. It was never brought before the town. It wasn't put on the warrant because there was other things going on in 2020. No one knew what 2021 would look like. So it's back. So what it is it's a surcharge that's based on property value. There are a number of exemptions you can utilize that include income, exempt the first 100,000 of your property value, age, and so on. It's a 0.5% minimum to participate, maximum 3% surcharge. The funding comes from the, Registry of Deeds? Is that the department from the state? So there are fees that are collected with every property transaction that go into the CPA trust fund. They just announced mid-November what the 2024 match was. So the way the match works is 80% of the money in that trust fund gets distributed among the CPA communities, matching their contribution, okay? So, and then there are 2 more rounds. So there's a total of 3 rounds of funding. In the next 2 rounds, the 20% is distributed in the next 2 rounds. In order to participate in the next 2 rounds of funding, you have to have the 3% surcharge. So everyone in CPA gets that first round of funding. Rounds 2 and 3 are tailored more, the population of the community as well as the property value per capita is factored in, and you put in a decile. Lunenburg's 4 out of 10. So try to favor the smaller communities, weight them a little bit more for the round 2 and 3 matches. So for this year, every CPA community got 18%. And then for those that were eligible for subsequent rounds, I think 8 got 100% match, something like that. So you can get up to 100% match. The money that you get from the surcharge and the match has to be spent in one of 3 categories. There's 3 categories. One is around open space and historic preservation. The other one is about housing affordability. And the third one is parks, open space. Right? So you have to distribute your 10% in each bucket. What you do with the remaining 70% is up to you. You can propose all the other projects, historic preservation, Ritter, Town Hall, historic buildings we have coming up, parks, Marshall Park, projects that are on the horizon for the town. You can divvy up the remaining 70% however you want. But the actual commitment of the fund to the project, so that goes to a town meeting vote. So the town decides how that money will be spent. The project is proposed and everything presented to the town at town meeting. Like I said, there's 200 communities now. None of the communities who have joined have backed out yet. None. 4 have had a vote to revoke their membership. That vote did not pass in all 4 cases. So it's kind of a savings account for the town. It can, lessen the burden on residents to fund these big projects we have coming. And I wasn't a big fan of it at first, and the more I learned about it and heard about it and thought what we're looking at for the future, I became a bigger fan of it, and I think it's definitely worth exploring.
So if we voted in at 3%, that means if your property tax was $100, it would go to $103, or it's 3%?
3% of your property.
Of your property value.
Assessment.
Of the
Assessed value.
Not what you're paying on
Yeah.
the actual tax.
3% of assessed value.
Of the assessed value, and there are exemptions, like you could forgive, if your property's worth $200,000, the town can vote to have an exemption to forgive the first $100,000, so the surcharge would be on $100,000 if you forgave the first $100,000. So there's a lot of communities do, and it doesn't have to be, it can be, 1%, it can be 2%, it can be 1.5%, anything from 0.5 is the minimum to 3. When it came before the town for a vote, I believe it was 3% both times. It just recently passed in Townsend at a 1% surcharge. And you can see so much information on this of what town has what surcharge and what exemptions and how long they've been in the plan. The lowest match that I've seen over the whole time of the program was 13%, was the lowest I ever saw. And it goes up to 100%. You're not guaranteed 100%, but even to be eligible for the 100%, you have to maximize the 3% and do the 3% surcharge.
So this would be an item that select board would take up and potentially put on.
That's the million-dollar question. Who can take this up?
I know
In 2020,
Historical Society was looking at it.
exactly. 2020, Rebecca Lantry gave a presentation to FinCom, to Select Board. I went back and watched those meetings. If Rebecca's in town, or anyone know her, I think she did a lot of work researching this in 2020. She brought it forward as, I think she was chair of Historical Commission at the time. If she wants to pick it up again or pass on, the information that she has, that would be great. It does require, if it passes, another committee to be formed. Yeah, which I think is actually maybe the biggest hurdle now. But it's definitely worth exploring. So the process would be, it has to go to a town meeting, and then it also has to go to a ballot vote. So this is not something that can, so shortest timeline goes to the annual town meeting, then it goes to election in November. That is probably the shortest. And so then we'd be eligible for 26, 6?
Well, it depends on when it's,
It comes out they just announce it like middle of November, so it's,
we may miss the 26th, depending on the timing.
yeah, so things never move quickly, but,
We got a lot on our plate as a town right now.
yeah, a little bit. But yeah, I think it's especially in light of the projects that we have on the horizon, I think. Yeah,
I love the viability of this. I like the additional revenue, the matching funds. I like that the surcharge is flexible with exceptions. I watched this and read about this a little bit, and it went to town meeting, and it went to, the second time it just came to the council. What are you going to do differently to get it passed, like to get residents on board? Like, what were the mistakes that were made?
I don't know. I wasn't here in 2007. That was the last time it actually came before the town. The select board voted to not put it on the warrant in 2020 because of just it being 2020 and so much going on. And there probably was no appetite that year. I mean, no one knew how we were going to come out of the pandemic. But override passed last year.
You're right.
TJ, Mandy, whoever else. So I think it's an education process for sure, would have to be done, because it's not a tax. It's a surcharge on your assessed value. It's a savings account. It's like you have a 401k at work. Your company does a 5% match. If you don't contribute 5% to reap the full match, you're leaving money on the table, right? I mean, these projects, we're going to pay for them. When they're going to be done, we're going to pay for them. Do we want to pay all of it, or do we want some help with that? Because even like 10%, someone's like, oh, that's not a really good match. If I said, hey, give me your money, I'll guarantee you a 10% return next year, would you be happy about that? I would be. I'm not saying it's a 10% minimum. I mean, I've seen 13 as a minimum, but there's no guarantee. So yeah, it would be a challenge. I think another challenge, if this were to pass, is getting the projects approved. That has to go to a town vote. So I know in some towns, money has sat in these different buckets for a long time because they couldn't get agreement on how to use the money. And it can sit there, right? And some towns purposely let it sit and build and then spend it. But the town is in control of how that money is used.
So, to me, a story needs to be put together around this, whether we need another override at some point down the road for operational, and then any debt exclusion we're looking at or borrowing for some of these big projects that are out there. I think collectively, all of those need to be assessed and put in front of the public if we wanted support on this. Because although it's a surcharge, in the end,
It feels like a tax. It shows up on your tax bill. It feels like a tax, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to piggyback on Chris here, maybe make the public aware of the various exceptions that may be available with this to ensure like a fair and equitable application across the board. They know there's a way that they may be able to get an exception. It might.
So those exceptions have to be stated when it goes to town meeting.
Okay.
So that's part of the program. You have to have what surcharge, what exemptions you want in place. So the town votes on all of that. I think one interesting bit, and I haven't had time to do it, and I don't know, maybe Rebecca Lantry did, looking back at the projects, the library, that wouldn't probably have qualified. Any of the projects that have been done in town that would have qualified for CPA funding, what did we spend and what would we have spent? Kind of historical retrospective, and then looking forward, project out, these are the projects we're looking at, and without CPA, and then different surcharges, ballpark, what we could expect to help fund those projects, and of course, what it would cost the resident, like we did with they did with the override on property value X, and this is how much more your property tax will be.
In cups of coffee.
and cups of coffee, which fewer cups of coffee lately, not because it's less money that we're spending. It just doesn't get you much coffee. Yeah, so anyway, I wasn't aware of this program, honestly, until being on the budget task force, and I think it's really, I've come around on it, to be honest.
What's your timeline to present as a warrant article? Like, then
Who's
5 meetings?
who's presenting this as a warrant article? We had,
So I think,
I don't know if this is going to come from the select board or not. I mean, I think we have to discuss it, but
I would not envision this as a 26 town meeting in either one.
the 25, you mean?
A 25, sorry.
Okay, yeah, that is
Okay.
beyond, that's quite a stretch goal.
Yeah.
I would love it, but I think, given the history, it has to be done. I think we'll get one more shot at this, probably, for a while. Yeah,
I think to get something like this passed, it needs to be a collective front. It can't just be one committee, one board, one department. It has to be a group effort in order to collaborate and educate the public. I mean, she was she was just saying, you know, our buildings are almost in disarray. I'm just going to say it. They need drastic repairs, and this will just help. I mean, we have Marshall Park. Everybody knows what's going on with Marshall Park, and anything else that's coming down the pike. This will only help the town and the residents. This is not just a savings account that we're just going to put away and store forever. As we fund this, these warrants will come at town meeting. Okay, do you want to fund this project? That kind of thing. And we could take up residents' actions too. If a resident wants to put a warrant, you know, we need our parks focused on, they can focus on that. Or if there's a school building, they can focus on that. But this is really the start. Like she said, you know, what did you want? At least 10% of your money back, you know, instead of paying 100% of the project, you pay for 90%. I mean, it's a huge cost savings to the town.
and I don't think the warrant has to come from any particular, I mean, I would love just the public to, citizens, you know, grassroots or combined effort. It doesn't, we all know it's too much work for a small group of people. I mean, everyone on the budget task force, I mean, everybody, they did a lot of work on top of the day job. You guys know how much work you have to do on top of your day job to get this done. So, yeah,
Okay.
I don't want to lose sight of it. I don't want it to fall off. Oh, do you want to keep going?
Sure.
You want me? Sure. Oh, so okay, I'll have to get my water. The number 5 was the green grants for the HVACs at the schools. These are, I believe, I have Dr. Burnham, so she can correct me if I'm wrong. I believe this is in the works already, right? These are projects that are being done. I know they've been talking with the green communities, and so this is, you know, something that was already kind of on their radar and planned.
Okay, and I know Dave is on Green Communities still.
Oh, yeah.
I think, right, and or Kate, if they want to chime in on this, feel free.
I think the next two, so the next two are around solar fields, one on the Old Town dump site and one on school lots. So you may have heard at various select board meetings during ARPA discussions, Michael Ray Jeffries brought up looking into solar on the Old Town dump site. And then also the possibility of having solar on the school lot. So this could be a revenue source. I know there's different ways of doing it. We discussed it on the budget task force as, you know, I don't have solar panels, but, you know, a lot of people do, they get credits on their electric, right? And I've heard a lot of people having trouble dealing with getting all the credits that they earn, and it's just, they carry over. It'd be a lot nicer to lease. One possibility we talked about on the task force was, you know, you lease the land to someone who puts their solar panels on and you just collect the cash from, that's cash coming in, not utility credits. Or you could put your own solar panels on there. So I don't know enough about it to say anything more than that, but suffice to say that it's a potential revenue source. We have 2 places in town, at least, that could possibly take advantage of this. Okay? Yeah.
Have you done any feasibility studies for either one of these projects, or is this just the beginning?
No, on town dump, I don't think anything was done for the school lots. I don't know if Dr. Burnham looked into it. As far as I know.
We have
it's-
not yet.
Okay, so it's an idea, like,
Okay.
it's, the to-do list is this long, and this is how much we can actually get done. The Brooks House lease, so that was covered, that was covered at town meeting, so we need to look into, because we're losing money maintaining Brooks House right now. I know what Chris wants to do with Brooks House, but, so if we could, Lisa, you want to go?
Next one.
Oh.
I'll finish that one.
Yeah, so that is known, so that's another possible source of revenue. You want to do this one? Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I do think we need to move on Brooks House. We need to make a decision and just go with it.
Yeah.
And
The municipal building committee, which I'm on, was asked at our meeting on Monday to take that over. And we're going to be meeting 2 Mondays from last Monday to discuss whether we have the capacity to do that. So that's something I don't know much about, other than, what we passed at town meeting.
we do have an estimated value of 30 to 50,000 based on the lease agreements, depending on what they entail.
How would you come up with
Anything.
that?
Well, it's looking at other towns, what they lease their buildings for, and depending on the use. That's basically essentially what the lease is.
Did you deduct our maintenance costs from that?
That seems high. That seems high.
What was the number?
30 to 50,000.
Yeah, that's what I have too. That's what I
Yeah,
looked
I'm
into,
saying I
too.
think that's high for a lease on that building. You think you're going to get 30,000 a year? I don't know.
Depending on, like I said, I don't know the building itself. I haven't been in the building that often, but it seems reasonable based on other research I've looked at other towns, what they lease the buildings for. That's not, like you said, that's not including the overhead as well.
yeah, I will say that
How much?
the capital plan list associated with Brooks House is, I forget the number, but like $500,000 sticks in my mind.
To maintain it?
To repair it.
To renovate it, to make it leasable.
Yeah.
Bring it up to code.
But how much are we spending on it now, just to keep it upright? Keep the
Yeah,
lights on?
that's
Well,
why
you
you
can always mothball
know my
it.
opinion on what to do. Okay. Any questions on this? I think we understand the recommendation.
Next recommendation was the review town trash and recycling programs. My understanding is when the recycling program was established, it was free to the town. It was at no cost, but now it's, I think the current cost is $250,000 a year, and it's just rising. The town has to make a, let's see. So the town has to make a decision if they want to continue this going forward. We can get out of the business recycling and just kind of have the citizens privatize, or we can somehow incorporate this into the annual budget and increase the cost. It's depending on the town decisions, what the residents want. But this is a huge cost, and it's significant, and it's hitting the operating budget for the town.
Or you could go subscription-based.
Which is a possibility, yeah. Anything else as well? Any questions?
No, I think it's time to do that analysis and make a recommendation on it.
Okay.
Yeah. One thing we don't know is actually how many people are actually using the town trash pickup versus private.
But everyone can use recycling even if they don't use the if they don't buy the yellow bag.
Yeah.
But the bigger question is how much is actually even being recycled?
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's no value in recycling like there used
No,
to be.
we used to get paid for it, now we don't.
Right.
If you do it with the program, you would sell more bags to offset the trash. There would be no recycling. But again, that's a conversation that needs to happen.
Yeah.
Chapter 90, town roads. So our understanding is there are certain roads in town that need to be delegated as town roads, and they're not currently, but we're still maintaining them. Is that correct? So delegating these roads as town roads and having them established, with the Commonwealth will increase our Chapter 90 funding, depending on the number of roads. We have an estimated value of an additional 10 to 20,000 a year.
Yeah, and I've looked at the list of roads, and they're all roads we're maintaining, and they've already done a lot of the analysis as to whether we've voted them in. To me, this is a go-do.
This came from you.
I know.
So,
Great idea.
Well, it was actually, Bill Bernard had brought it up in one of his presentations, and it just seemed like a go-do. And then with the analysis that had already been done for something else, it was actually the routes for the trash contract. They showed that some of those roads had already been approved and were valid roads, so.
yeah, I don't know, did you get the slides I sent you? I don't know if you got them, but
did.
the
I
list
haven't-
of roads is on there.
Yeah.
I included, so,
Yeah.
okay.
Any questions? All right. High deductible health plan. So this would have an alternative option of health insurance for town employees for a high deductible plan, which would be a cost savings in return for the town. Health insurance is one of the most largest costs, and with most people will opt out or traditional health insurance if they can save on the other end, if they're not going to go see the doctor as much, they don't anticipate. So they can have this high deductible plan, pay less monthly, and have a cost savings themselves. As an additional option, it's not taking away from the current options of insurance, it's just an additional.
There's also typically a health savings account that can go with this, which is triple tax-free. So it's a huge advantage for anyone that's thinking of healthcare in their retirement.
Or HSA.
So it's tax-free going in, it's tax-free during, and it's tax-free coming out, so.
I also think because we're diversifying health insurance options, the town can better manage and predict health insurance expenditures, contributing to overall financial stability, I think is a good thing.
Yep.
And that goes along with recommendation 12 is the health insurance buyouts. So, this seems like a no-brainer to offer health insurance buyouts. So if someone wants to take up their spouse's health insurance so they can find a health insurance somewhere, we will give them an incentive, which will be a drastic cost savings to the town, because even though we're providing them with a buyout with a cash incentive, it's still a lot less than the annual cost that the town would be paying. And the estimated value would be dependent on the number of buyouts, which is not there yet.
Do you see any issues with unions? Yeah. Okay. Is there any short-term costs aligned with this? Yes.
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay.
Just the cost savings, really.
And how are we going to get across to employees that the buyout is not like a reduction in their benefits? Like when I see this, I'm like, oh my gosh, am I losing benefits? What's going on?
Well, I don't think we'd have to educate the staff that it's not an actual reduction of benefits. It's just,
Right.
I think it's another benefit added. So you can opt into the health insurance, that's fine, or you can take a cash incentive and use your spouse's at somewhere else. You're not taking away the health insurance. You're saying, well, if you like, have this amount of money and go somewhere else, and that'll work for the town as well. So it's not a reduction, it's an added
Did
benefit.
you look at how many staff currently do not take health insurance?
I did
The
not,
ballpark number of that?
no.
Because they would instantly opt out of it, and we would be paying those folks.
I wonder if PEC would know, because that's who the driver is, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, there'd be a break even, how many, if we got 10 additional employees, okay, then we're breaking even. If we got 20, then we're making money. That would be, and it's a nice option to have because it gives the employee, if your spouse has a great benefits plan, then that gives them a little extra money in their pocket, so that's.
Also, will you be using like the legal department to make sure that it includes like the Affordable Care Act and we're just making sure we're covering all of our bases?
Well,
there?
yeah, we wouldn't just write something up, the collective bargaining units would have to agree, it'd have to go to, what's it, PEC? I said PERC. But it has to go through PEC to the vetting process, it has to go through legal, there's a lot of steps in between. So this wouldn't be just a memorandum, it would be an actual process.
Brian Layton presented the high deductible to you guys, right? Yep. Yeah, okay.
Any questions? Next recommendation is the payroll and purchase order streamlining. This is really a cost savings, but it's really a more time saving for the staff here in town. So, after a diagnostic audit and with myself and the school district business manager, we can eliminate duplicative processes within within the timeline. So, for example, we are currently upgrading. We will be upgrading our Munis system sometime in January through March. The process is already underway. With that being said, once the upgrade happens, the next step is to go to employee self-service. That will eliminate paper timesheets. People should be able to process their payroll off-site wherever they need. There'll be a lot of education with that. I can see.
Paper timesheets?
Yep, paper timesheets. Trying to get this into 2025. But as the steps go forward, trust me. I got here and I was surprised. But
Are you using paper timesheets because the system you're using now is not?
no, the system I'm using now. So I guess a couple of years ago, the employee self-service module was opened within the Munis system that we have. However, there were so many issues incorporated with that, with the version that we have, and the server didn't have the capacity to manage the data. So right now, there's a paper timesheet system, but our payroll benefits manager enters it into the Munis, trying to reduce all that duplicative work. I need my water also. And also streamlining the purchase order process as well. So as things goes out to bid, just utilizing the tools that we have instead of having all this redundancy. And that will free up the staff instead of running around crazy trying to coordinate all of this. They can just simply move on and focus on the real work that needs to be done.
I think there's a lot of these streamlining and efficiency things that could be done in town. Even like boards and commissions booking a room for a meeting. It's not even documented how you do it, as far as I can tell. And the poor people who are trying to manage them, and the poor people on our side who are trying to coordinate, to get agendas out in a, timely fashion, it just screams for like, put workflows in place. Right? We're still emailing agendas and emailing minutes. Just put a workflow together. Use minute software. I mean, there's so many tools that are out there these days and standardize things. I mean, everyone does minutes differently. Everyone does agendas differently. So I think there's a ton in the streamlining that could be looked at.
Absolutely. Any other questions? And the next one is standardizing and improve workflow within town finances as well. Again, improve and implement a standard chart of accounts for all departments. Currently, the chart of accounts is different for each department depending on who you're talking to. So DPW doesn't align with fire, fire doesn't align with accounting, accounting doesn't align with the assessors. Streamlining the chart of accounts will make for not only easy interpretation, but easy reporting as well. So you'll get the same report regardless of who you talk to. So if you say, Bill, can I have your Chapter 90 funding? You should get that easily from the report. You should be able to, and also, you know, the departments, they will be able to do the work they need to do more efficiently as well without having someone tell them, well, this is what this means, this is what this means. Everybody will have the same information. Just the dollars would be different, essentially.
Yeah, it would help us to have standardized reporting through our budget cycle
Yeah.
and select board for when they see things and everyone. So I am totally with this one.
All right, next one is the school solar contracts, which is actually currently happening with the school. Kate is on, but she can correct me if I'm wrong, but my conversation with Dr. Gilson, they're currently reviewing the current contracts to the solar panel providers to determine the school's panels are providing maximum revenue to the town. And as necessary, switch leases and consolidate leases as well. So that's actually currently underway. Number 16 and 17 go hand in hand. Is currently create a regular review process for school fees and town fees. So right now, you know, it seems that the fees aren't reviewed regularly. You know, there should be some kind of schedule annually, depending on the type of fee that's going on. You could put them on annually, biannually, or every third year. You just put them on a cycle to enable to review. So that way you can look at a department and say, okay, the next budget recommendations are up. Guess what? You're next to review your fees. See if they're substantial, not substantial, but if there are, you know, valid and, you know, okay for the coming year, or if they need to be increased in order to produce additional revenue to cover the overhead costs associated.
Sounds good.
This one, the warrant delivery at town meeting. So currently, the current process is a paper process. And because it is a paper process, it reduces the timeline for the warrant to be sent out to the public. In order to reduce that timeline, you know, we can do, there's a cost savings here of $7,500 every year that will be had. So in order to reduce that timeline, you know, you can send out emails to the town, post it on the town website saying, here's the town warrant. You can post it at a shorter time frame, and if you need one, you can pick it up, come pick it up at town hall, pick it up at the library, pick it up wherever, and we will have those available to you. But that's $7,500, which isn't a lot, but it's a recurring cost, and you know, we're trying to save the additional pennies, like Tony said, finding the coins in the cushions. So this is one of them, which seems like a no-brainer to me, but this is the recommendation.
It's green, too.
Exactly. This one here, recommendation 19, consolidate town and school snow removal and ground maintenance. It's just reviewing the viability of consolidating town and snow removal and ground maintenance. I don't know too much about this, but it just, if you want to.
So we had a lot of discussion around this. It's not obvious that there'd be a big savings. The logistics and staff, we didn't, well, the outcome of our discussion was we wouldn't be saving any money. The one caveat I'll give is, you can imagine if we contracted out these services, we don't want town having one vendor and school negotiating, there's probably more power in negotiating together for a common vendor, but that's not the current situation. So that's why it fell to the bottom. This one comes up a lot, and we just couldn't see how we could get to any savings.
There's capital savings associated with this, in my opinion.
How?
We have multiple snow plowing trucks, and the school's going to buy a truck with a plow. We don't need.
Do we have enough drivers for all of them?
What?
Do we have enough drivers for all of them? Like,
That's a different question.
okay. I think that's the, because I think we would use all those, so are we using all the trucks? I guess.
We have 3 on order, one
Yeah.
pickup truck, 1 ton, not 1 ton, what are the big ones, 10 ton?
5 or 10, I'm
Yeah.
not sure which size they.
And then the schools wants trucks,
There's a
each
pickup,
has
I think,
lawn
at school.
equipment, they all have mowers. I mean, it's just, and we don't have the staff for all this stuff. So I think there's real savings in this one.
I don't know about it.
Logistics.
I don't know about it.
Logistics,
You
yeah.
don't know about
I
what?
think there'll be some complexities there, operational differences, coordination and management
I
differences.
think you require more staff.
That, but
That negates the,
There's a loss
a
of
management
control,
problem.
which is what the real issue is. People want control. And when you should be, if you have a perfectly plowed school, no one's leaving or coming if the roads aren't plowed, right? This makes absolute sense to me, and you don't have redundant departments in any businesses that I know of.
but I think the schools and the sidewalks and the roads kind of have to be plowed simultaneously, right?
Why?
Well, for the reason you just said, if the schools are clear but the roads aren't, you can't get to school. And if the roads are clear but the school's not, you can't put the kids in the school.
Yeah.
So it's just a capacity issue. You don't need 2 departments running it.
I think what you're getting, it's
It's a big difference.
body, it's staffing to run.
There's directors in both.
Yeah.
Higher paid directors in both. Managing small groups. We're top heavy. You got capital equipment that can be better shared.
Yeah.
We're gonna have 4 10-ton plow trucks with like 2 operators.
Aren't we taking some of the older ones off? Aren't the new ones replacing some?
Yeah, but we're purchasing 3, and we may purchase a 4th one under capital plan.
And how many are coming off? Those 3 are replacing some, I assume.
3.
We lost.
right.
Okay, so it's a net neutral. It's just a turnover of equipment, right? Like a life cycle, like you get a new laptop from work every 3 years. Right?
Again, I see no reason for the schools to be in the business of plowing driveways and doing lawn care. It makes 0 sense to me. They should be in the business of educating. And just because you have a town manager and a superintendent doesn't mean that they need to have bodies under them that control facilities.
That's
and grounds
true.
And snow removal.
So it's moving, so it's still, the mowing gets done, you're changing the organizational structure,
Yeah.
not how the work is actually done.
Right. And the same thing with IT. The fact that we have 2 IT departments is ludicrous.
Suser's one of them.
Suzer, yeah, and whomever the other one is.
So watch the Board of Assessors meeting last night.
So if you have 2 directors, and they're both in charge of their own scope of work, who do they report to? Who's the singular person?
You
Point-
dotted line them. You dotted line to one of them. We do it in business all the time. Our engineering.
Are you asking
dotted
now?
line to-
Yeah.
Oh, no, she's asking now, what's the current
Oh, no,
organization?
now there's ones to the superintendent, ones to,
So it's a dotted line to those.
solid line for the facilities director for the school.
Oh, for the school.
Solid line, facilities director to the town manager.
Which the facility director for the schools is vacant again.
So it's a
Yeah,
perfect time to
they've
make
always
the
had
change. Go ahead.
We don't have enough staffing.
Peter
Especially for
Boardmore
snow.
would like to say something.
Boardmore?
Boardmore?
Boardmere?
Okay, Boardmere, I can't see that far.
I'm not bored from this discussion. Good evening. So just for a point of clarity, the requests that is currently under consideration for capital planning is not a net increase in trucks for our DPW. My understanding is that our DPW, when, running at full authorization for 10-wheel dump truck plow Sanders, there's a total of 5 vehicles. Right now, we have, I believe, 1 functioning vehicle in that category. We have 3 on order, and there is a request for a 5th. The problem, in my opinion, is not equipment in the DPW or equipment in the schools. We have had the sum total of equipment to be able to do the work. The problem is that there's a different mission here. The schools have to be able to execute 990 hours of instruction in 180 days, somewhere between the week before Labor Day and before the 4th of July. And to do that, they need to open school. And to open school, you need to have cleared and sanded parking lots, and you need to have cleared and sanded entryways and sidewalks. And that is the focus of the facilities department in the schools, to be able to do that. The DPW needs to keep roads clear for vehicles to be able to traverse those roads. Vehicles including school buses, yes, but it's a different level of priorities of work. Just by way of example, last winter we had, 2 big storms maximum. My parents live on Whalum Road, and 2 days following a big storm, the DPW is out there with a plow blade plowing sidewalks on Whalum Road. Well, if that's how we're going to, and I'm not faulting them for it. I understand there were equipment issues with the track list at the time, but the net is that there's different priorities of work amongst those different staffs. Now, Chris, you're absolutely right. If we had very competent managers who could manage multiple missions with similar equipment simultaneously, I would be all for it. But right now, I have no confidence that we have that level of sophistication of management, particularly given everything that you've just shown around the lack of modernization that we have been able to accomplish in Lunenburg over the last 7 years. When you think about the ways of work that are different in business over the course of the last seven years, and what we have done in Lunenburg, which is zero in terms of modernizing our ways of work, I think that that's where we should be focused. And we can deal with plows and snow blowers and lawnmowers perhaps in another year. Thank you.
All right, I'm not coming off this one. It's been my opinion for 5 years, and I'm going to make it known in every single thing. Some ad hoc example of using plows on a sidewalk does not change my opinion that a department of 2 and a department of 7 should have 2 directors at director level pay.
I will say, part of the diagnostic audit, some of that conversation was looking at the way the town operates, not just looking at finance. One of the options might be to look at town operations in order to streamline processes. There are other recommendations within here, streamlining processes, but part of the diagnostic audit, one of the thoughts would be to look at town operations, to trim the fat, per se.
I might be able to be swayed, but I've only been here a year. But what I've noticed is that there's not a lot of positive collaboration going on. So it would be I think the challenge is to find those managers that can work together. And I think this would be a perfect.
Well, that would be the expectation.
Yes.
I think you'd have to build in the culture. And
Right.
I think this comes up to, it's hard to do this, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. Just because it's hard doesn't mean we don't do it. I think Homer Simpson said the opposite once, but it's the way, it seems like the right thing to do. If we were starting up a new town and we said, hey, let's get a group with plows and lawnmowers, and we'll have a small group over here that does this and a bigger group over here, 2 managers, you go, what are you, nuts? Well, yeah, it might take a couple of years, it might take 3 years, but let's start the process and get it done.
Yeah, and I think culture-wise and personnel-wise, we have a new town manager coming in, we have a clean slate, a fresh start. I think if there's any time to start moving towards recommendations of organizational efficiency across both sides of the municipal and school portions of the town, it's a great opportunity.
I mean, let's not do it just to do it.
It has to make sense.
We have to set the program up for success. We don't want to just do something to do it. I think we need to put people in place that we can trust before we, like, let's just do it. I don't.
Yeah, I have two comments. One, we do have a lot of people in key positions who have been here less than a year. One is standing right here, which is tough coming in, playing catch up, as he's had to do a lot of work and clean up. But the positive side of that, same thing with Dr. Gilson, who's been here even less time, is it's a fresh perspective. You get lost, you're buried in it, you're too close to it, you can't see, and you have people who come in, bring other experience with them, or sometimes just have a whole new outlook and question things that you're just, never occurred to me. It's because it's been done like that. Right. My other comment is, it used to be one department, right, in Lunenburg, before my time?
I don't think so.
Well, there was never a facilities department on the.
Facilities was split from DPW, that was the split I'm thinking of. There was a
It was under
split.
PW.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
That's the split I'm thinking of.
I don't think
School always had
DPW
some.
ever did school facilities though,
No.
right?
No.
Nor
School always.
So I'm thinking more grounds
Honda always managed
than
school.
facility. I'm thinking more the plowing, the mowing, than
For
the
the school?
facility.
Right, did DPW's facilities ever manage the grounds of the school?
Not that I know of. They may have assisted. I don't believe they ever completely managed them.
Not to my knowledge, Chris.
Okay.
And they have assisted with snow removal, but they never completely managed it.
Yeah.
Do you want us to do the last one? Or is it-
Yes,
You sure?
we're going to be under.
So the last one is it's on here because we spent quite a bit of time, split tax rate. I'll give you the background how this came about. When we were looking at benchmark communities, Maynard kept coming up. It's kind of, to really simplify it, if you took Lunenburg and just shrunk the size, the land, it matches up pretty similar to the demographics of Lunenburg. And they have a split tax rate. They have for a very long time. I want to think it was 2003, when digital was in place in Maynard, and it never went away. And they have managed to grow their commercial, even having that split tax rate. So Evan Waters did a lot of comparisons with Maynard, and we had Linda McQuaid and Brian LaFawn come in from the Assessors Department and Board of Assessors to talk about it. And if you saw the tax classification hearing, it's too much of a burden to put on Lunenburg businesses, especially in light of the fact that there's no way to, it's a peanut butter, right, across all the businesses. So whether you're a small business with 5 employees, or Tony's favorite example is Walmart, it hits you just as hard. There's no way to weight it within that. So it's on here because we really looked at it. This was one of the things like, well, it's always been done that way. Well, let's question it. Let's try to, turn it upside down, look at it every which way. And we landed on a single tax rate, and as did the Board of Assessors. And any change in that would obviously require, legislation. So that, we just tagged that one on at the end because we did spend about, I think, a whole meeting on that.
We had a pretty lengthy debate when Evan was still here on this as well.
I think he brought up a lot of the Maynard data that he showed the budget. I think he brought it up at one of your meetings too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the data that's not in there is they're near Marlboro and Hudson, they're near 45,
Yeah.
and they're, So they're kind of convenient in the proximity to other towns that are bringing
Yeah,
business through there.
they're a cheaper alternative to Concord. They're right, because I live there, right next to Concord. Yeah. And then it's kind of sandwiched in between, you've got Sudbury, you've got Acton, you've got Concord, even Hudson. So it's a little, it looks on paper, a lot of the numbers match up with Lunenburg, but it's inside 495. Its location is,
Yeah.
it's very close to multiple commuter rail stations on the same line, but multiple stations. So anyway, that's on there. But we landed on a single tax rate anyway, but we did.
I have a question. Did the town do a financial impact assessment just about the fairness of implementing the split tax rate? I know we don't have a lot of businesses. We have Walmart, but all of our other businesses are quite small.
Yeah, go ahead, Linda did.
No, I believe if you look back at the tax classification hearing, the Board of Assessors did do that kind of deep dive
Okay.
into the impact to the community. The other thing I'll bring up as well, if we went with a split tax rate, we'd be the only town in the area. So that might be a hard economic hit. Any new businesses could just go to Leominster, Fitchburg. If they're right on the town line, we would just lose them. They just go straight over and have the single rate. So that's all our recommendations that we have.
Great.
Yeah, there's probably nothing really I mean, it's probably a lot was to be expected, or you could have predicted, but I think having the diversity we had on the task force coming to the same conclusions, I think just reinforces how real they are. And I said this at the select board meeting, I want to take this opportunity to say it again publicly, to thank Ezzy, Dr. Burnham, Dr. Gilson, Tony. Tony was great chair. Hope he's having fun coaching basketball right now. And Heather was on to start, and then Carter joined us, and Carter's experience from other communities was helpful. Evan Waters also had a lot of numbers, a lot of insight.
A lot of data.
A lot of data, that's my favorite thing. So, but I think we had a lot of good dialogue. We had a lot of people come in. The only thing, we didn't get to any capital plan recommendations, but when I wrote the charter for the task force, I was, I know that the capital planning committee wanted to have a long-term plan in the spring, and so I was kind of leaning on that, but that's fine. That didn't happen, so we didn't get to really dive deep into that. But we have the capital planning committee to do that anyway. But I think the discussions were really good. We had department heads in. We had the union reps come in, teachers, fire, police, everybody, and it was. I think it was a really good interaction. I think the group functioned really well. So I want to thank everyone for their time. The employees who had to stay here and put in the extra hours is really appreciated, because I know that they are stretched thin, and we're about to head into budget season, so there's no time to come up for air.
So I'd echo all the thanks on that. One question I would have is, well, a couple questions. Is the committee going to dissolve at this point?
I believe so, yeah. So this presentation, I think, so Tony he said he corrected 4 typos. I don't know what they are. So once we get the typos worked out on the executive summary, and then I have slides that I sent to Chris, we're going to have that go on the town website. There's a budget task force site, so we'll have the documents out there for the public. I don't think we can keep going given what's coming up.
All right, so my recommendation would be that we also have probably in office, action tracking tools, right? We should take each of these recommendations and set an action for it, and I think it's select board that chartered this to begin with, but drive these to conclusion, right? Not just, we did a whole bunch of stuff, we'll implement a couple things.
Yeah.
And the conclusion may be, we're not going to do it, right? We're not going to go to a split tax rate. We've closed out on this action. And I think as a town, we should get better at driving, towards that kind of mindset. Treat it like a project, treat it like management, like any of us do in the corporate world. So, just a recommendation.
No, I think all of us spent so much time on this, we don't want to see it fall off. So, yeah, I agree.
I second.
And I think Chris just volunteered for something else.
I'm not volunteering anything.
Next time this comes through, you'll be the chair of the next round, budget task force.
That's right. So did, Dr. Burnham, did you have anything else? You were on that committee for the group?
No, nothing more to add. I would just echo the gratitude that was already expressed to all the members for the work that they did. It was a lot of good conversation and a lot of good work done, I think.
Okay.
I also want to specifically thank Renee for bringing this forward. Being new, coming to the town, my position, I'm sort of in a silo. This actually opens up to see what's actually happening in every part of town. So I appreciate it, and specifically thank her.
Anything else from the board?
I'd like to say thank you for all that work. That's a lot. That's a lot. Bringing all those people together, the right key people, is challenging. And all the people you mentioned are key people. So I know that you put a lot of work into getting everybody brought in. So I thank you. I appreciate it.
I think it shows, the town side and the school side can work together. I mean, we questioned, I brought up school regionalization again. Just, put that out. Anything was up to go on, and we weren't going to turn away any ideas. I mean, they could all get shot down after discussion, but hey, have the discussion, so.
Collaboration starts with leaders exhibiting the values, right? So I think that's a great example of that.
Yep. Agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so before maybe Dr. Burnham and Peter leave, just because you're here, I'm going to skip to one item on the agenda, which is reviewing the budget season schedule. So I had been talking with Carter a bit about putting together the budget season calendar, and I've asked him for two things. Well, he told me one thing. One is he needs 25 days to put out the warrant, right? So if we backwards plan this, 25 days. I asked him for from the time we have the budget hearing, the public hearing, that we need 3 additional meetings after that in order to finalize, to deliberate on our recommendations, fresh, not off of a 4-hour meeting. We need all the warrants so that we can vote on all the warrants. And then we need 2 additional weeks to make sure we can draft a Finance Committee report and then come back to finalize it and vote on it. So I've asked that, based on that 25-day and the timing of it and the fact that we meet on Thursdays, that those 4 meetings be kind of in the calendar. Now, depending upon the forward planning aspect of this, it can drive towards what are the critical aspects that, say, school department would need in order to have a budget in time for that public hearing. I don't think any of us want to go through, 3 4-hour meetings each and every week through the entire winter again, right? And I know things pop up, but I do think Finance Committee needs time to do our job as well. And I think the habit we've gotten into of not having a Finance Committee report in the warrant is one that we should try to stop having. So I would ask that, Ezzy, if you want to comment on this as well. And while Ezzy is coming up, I don't have Carter's recommendation yet. He was unable to get it to me for tonight. I suspect that, maybe in the first meeting in January, he'll have that.
I will say I met a lot this week with Carter, setting up budget sheets to provide to the departments to get their recommendations. I sent that out right before this meeting. Chris, I think I CC'd you on the email. To get the department heads' recommendations for FY26. We're giving them until the 21st to get back to us. Carter's working on a budget schedule. However, with ARPA and capital, lately it's been pushed back because the ARPA funding is actually ending this next week. So we're just trying to get that wrapped up. But he's working on getting a schedule. But just wanted to give you an update that those sheets to the departments for the request did go out.
Okay.
And it's based, the sheets are basically, here's your FY25 budget, list your recommendations, any specific requests, you need to do an actual analysis and deep dive to let us know why.
Okay.
That kind of thing. That's the operating.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Beardman, I'll allow you to.
Hey, Chris, thanks. Can you elaborate a little bit on the information that you just shared in terms of the timing? Because I'm looking at calendars and backing off days, but I'm not sure where we're starting from. Like 25 days, is that from when the warrant lands in my mailbox, or town meeting, or what? What is the starting point of the backward plan? And then, do you have any insight in terms of who's actually doing the work here? My understanding is that Carter's contract ends in about a month, and the charter stipulates that, there's a 3-month period and then a 3-month extension. And then, has anybody articulated who's actually carrying the ball in this game, so to speak?
Okay, so I will read you what Carter emailed me, which has said, I've come to believe that we need all final actions in writing at least 25 days before the final town meeting to allow for quality controls, proofs, printing, and mailing. So I read that as being 25 days from the date of the town meeting back in August.
Okay, so town meeting is on May 2nd. So you back off 25 days from that, that's April 7th. And then you're saying you need 3 meetings before that, so that would be theoretically April 2nd, March 26th, and March 19th. And that sounds kind of like the timeline we've typically been on for the public hearing, is that 3rd full week of March, if all things go well, right?
I think so. I don't have a calendar in front of me. I think what I do want to have is, I don't want to go through the entire briefing of articles, debate, everything else, and then deliberate on everything. I'd like that week for us all to digest everything, and then come in fresh with the deliberations and to rough out what we think should be in the final report. So it's public hearing, T plus 7 days for deliberations and kind of outlining the final report. 1 more week for a draft, 1 more week for a final report, which would then have to meet that 25 days, which gets awkward because of a Thursday and stuff like that. But
Yeah,
so I think
fair.
we're in the
Okay.
ballpark, Peter. I just think that you've been in my seat.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah,
you know-
no, I get it. But I, what it's worth, we did get those reports out. This is a recent phenomenon. So, as painful as it is.
Yep.
But I hear you. I hear you. I think we need to continue this conversation and land on an agreed upon date where, in particular, the school department presents its approved budget. And with the part of the discussion that we got into at a school committee meeting several weeks ago when we were talking about this is do we want to go back to the days where the superintendent is presenting a 95% budget because the school committee hasn't made a final approval, and they're presenting to you, their best educated guess. And my preference is not to do that, but my first year on the finance committee, that's exactly what we did. So I think those are the challenges here.
Okay, so my plan would be that when Carter gets that to me, that I'll circulate it to the select board, maybe they'll probably get it anyways, and then to the school committee. I think they have the hardest job in meeting all that. That also comes down to all moneyed articles need to be in place for the public hearing as well. I think we found ourselves in this, well, maybe we'll have additional public hearings to hear moneyed articles because they're not fine. There's got to be a pens down thing for finance committee to do our job. So that was the reason I asked for it, and the reason I think I sent, an email to select board as well as school committee members, just to be transparent in what I was looking for from Carter. Yeah, to your second question about how is this getting pulled together, I'm not sure. I'll have to talk, I guess, with Carter and Caesar about that. At a minimum, hopefully we get, at least a budget number, to school committee, so you can start to do your planning as well. So it's going to be a fun time. So, but I did want, school committee and select board, Renee, you can pass that back as well. I'm sure Tom will listen to this and maybe others. But that's my ask at least. Any comments or questions or concerns about what I laid out related to that? Okay. Anyone else in the audience? All right, thank you. So let me just take the rest of new business. Town manager search committee update. The town manager search committee has finalized its job. We had interviews last week in executive session. They remain in executive session with 6 candidates. We down selected to 3 candidates to put forward. And now it's between John Petrin, who's our consultant in this process, and the select board. I think they are going to meet on the 7th and the 14th. I think the 14th are the actual conduct of the next round interviews. So at this stage, those names will become public, the 3 that go forward, and the interviews themselves will also be public, so everyone can attend and listen or watch and hear about it. I think there'll be about 75-minute interviews. They asked for about an hour of Q&A, and then 15 minutes for the candidate to present something that they had previously presented, to see kind of their presence as it relates to that. So hopefully with some negotiation timeline after that, and hopefully we have a town manager not too far from now, but it's definitely going to make for a challenging budget season. Excuse me. And I think as finance director, you're probably going to have a lot on your plate to help with this. And I think between FinCom and Select Board, I think Select Board's going to have to take on some of the responsibility of town manager for getting decisions made and that sort of thing. So hopefully it leads to a good end result from our perspective through budget season. But we definitely moving forward on that. Filling that critical role in town. Any questions related to that? All right. A capital planning update, I had sent, did I send you guys a list of all that?
Yeah.
So capital planning finalized its recommendation on Monday for this year. And then Peter, who's chair, is going to start calling probably monthly meetings to start to look at the actual planning aspects of capital planning versus the review aspects of capital planning. And start really looking at the 5-year plan in more detail and a whole bunch of other things. Our meeting is probably online at this point if you want to see the last one, but we will continue to try to get to a, 5-10-year capital plan as part of this process. With that said, were there any comments or questions or concerns related to the capital plan as it stands right now? And we will have further hearings on it. Okay. So that's the last of the new business. Ezzy, did you have a finance director report?
On Tuesday, I presented the FY24 year-end financials. I think I forwarded it to the group as well. I wasn't planning on presenting again. Welcome to watch the meeting. But if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I could address. Final free cash was approved at 2.7 and 2.27.
2.25.
2527. I don't have it in front of me, I'm sorry. And also our tax rate has been set at $14.36. My largest recommendation, I think, to the select board was to look at the staffing in public safety. The overtime is already over budget. Not already over budget, but it's at over capacity for FY24, and that's apparent in the staffing level. If you have additional staffing, that overtime will come down. It'd be cost neutral, I think. If you add additional staff, overtime goes down. But it would alleviate the stress of the staff working the overtime. And I think they're already stressed out as it is from my conversations, but you can see it in the numbers. It's really apparent. And a lot of information in there, I guess, hadn't been brought previously, but there's been requests to add those things in there, like the trust funds, special revenue funds, and things like that. So it's not just trying to gauge what the FinCom and Select Board want and just add those in there without overbearing everybody with too much info.
Yeah, no, I appreciated the detail. I haven't studied it yet. I've been kind of busy, but any questions from the board on that? Committee? I guess we're a committee. I don't know the difference.
This is good.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm trying. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. All right, under old business, we had Project 2011, which is the school funding formula. 211, I guess, referring to the number of communities that are fall into that, minimum aid. Any updates on any of that? I should probably read it. It's a thing that I forget who brought it up. I thought you brought it up.
No, I don't think so.
It's 211 communities of the 351 in Mass fall into the same situation we fall in with Chapter 70, which is we get the minimum increase every year. That's $70, maybe $100. So there's kind of this caucus hopefully forming amongst these 211 to really attack that this is a systemic problem that needs to be solved. Tom, did you bring this up?
Representative Scarsdale was the one that has been, at least in this area, heading that up. So
Yeah.
she was the one that had it. I think at the time, Evan was involved. I actually went to one meeting that they had, and that's where I learned a lot about it. But I haven't heard much about it beyond that. But it's something that we should keep on our plate if it becomes a factor, then obviously we, like the other 210 municipal cities and towns will want to push that through as best we
Right.
can.
Okay. So I don't have any updates on it, but I just wanted to keep it there as it's obviously something that our increases are not reflective of the 2.5% in inflation in this area. So I think it is an area where the schools needs to be properly funded by the state. Yep, yeah.
Carol Ashambo, school committee secretary, and the 211 initially, they met with Representative Scarsdale, as you said, and then there was another meeting after that time where Representative Scarsdale met with some, I think, networking type people to try and push this forward. I think the more that the legislators, our legislators and other legislators hear that there is a major problem with that funding situation, the better off it's going to be. Her feel is to build capacity with a lot of people, and she's not giving up on that.
Yeah.
So there hasn't been a big meeting of everybody recently, but there's still work being done.
Okay, thank you. And then, Tanya, you probably don't understand Chapter 70, no one really does, I think. But there are presentations online. We've had consultants come in or that understand the formula intimately. I can probably find a date, it's in our agendas when they came. You may want to watch that if you're interested in the formula. And if you understand it, you can explain it to all of us.
Is this just specific to town government or city government?
So what ends up happening is we get a cherry sheet. A cherry sheet is all the state funding as well as what we kind of owe to the state once a year. In Chapter 70 is school funding from the state,
Across the board, towns and cities?
towns and cities. Yep. And there's a lot of factors that go into how that's calculated. But the net result is, I think it's called hold harmless. We end up getting about $70 more per pupil every year, where others are getting more like 2.5%.
Yes, they are.
And, yeah,
That's low.
it is low. Yeah, so it's hard to make up the difference when the school budget is more than half of the overall budget, and the state contribution to that is diminishing percentage-wise every year. So,
Take a peek at it.
yeah. Grant writing services, one recommendation is to come up with a policy on the grant writing. I don't know that we're gonna maybe use much of it this year, but I think we should. I do think some groups might be trying to get some money, but they don't know the process by which to even do that. So I know Heather was going to try to come up with a policy for how to deal with that, but it's something that we should look into. Consolidations of services and departments, we talked about that earlier. All right, so anything on old and new business that anyone wants to revisit? Great. All right, minutes, we have minutes from October 10th and October 24th. Have folks had a chance to review them?
Yeah.
Okay, I would entertain a motion to approve them unless there were any concerns.
Can I approve if I wasn't here?
You can, or you can abstain, we would be able to pass without it, but you can vote on it even if you're not.
I mean, I reviewed it, seems
Okay,
fine.
I'll make the motion.
Are they gonna, fix like the font? There's a lot of spaces and gaps and stuff.
I'll look at it.
This wasn't too bad, but the other one, there was a lot.
I'll look at it
Difficult to
before I
read.
send it in. I'll look at the formatting. So we had a motion from Tom, was there a second?
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. All right, we are all caught up with minutes, other than the last one. And I looked back like 3 years and made sure that everything was posted online. So the only one we're missing is a joint meeting with Select Board, I think when our representatives were here. So I'm not even sure that the one question Evan had was worthy of minutes, but we're really caught up, which is good. So I thank Danielle for that. All right, gotta flip my paper. Committee reports. I gave 2 of mine. Do we have any other committee reports?
Municipal building, I'll just bring that up. We had a bunch of, I'm on that committee, we had a bunch of meetings since our last meeting. We had one firm that submitted proposal. We hired them. Monday, we had a meeting and they presented a very rough draft of what they perceived as what would happen. And so basically what this is the renovation of this building here, Town Hall, and the renovation and addition to the Ritter, which would become the new Town Hall. And it was the first draft. If you saw the meeting, look at it. The committee wasn't very excited about the addition, how it looked, and where the main entrance was for that. But the architectural firm, that's what they do. They want to know what we want, and so they took that information, and we'll see what happens at our next meeting. But one thing I learned was that it was said a couple times by a few different people that the addition on the Ritter, from the original building from 1910, the 1960s or 50s edition, isn't in very good shape and has lots of issues. So I think that's going to be a concern. I don't know if that's how bad that is, but that's something that I'm sure as the architects go in and do more work, they'll see. But we're moving along, and hopefully we'll get a report to show everybody what the estimated cost will be and what the final product will look like for these 2 buildings. We were also letting, at the end of the meeting, our chairman, who was also on the select board, Mr. Jeffries, told us that the select board had asked us to take over the Brooks House lease issue, and there were some people that wanted to, and some people said we didn't have the capacity, and so we decided to bring it up at our next meeting, so we'll have a discussion about that.
Was there any discussion on the TC Passios building? I hear from the facilities director that it did not survive the winter.
Yeah, well, we haven't talked about that. We are aware of that, and it's brought up from time to time, but it's we're basically trying to focus on phase 1, which is Ritter and Town Hall.
Okay.
And maybe the Brooks House.
Okay. Any other committee reports? All right.
I watched Sewer Commissioner's short meeting. I think they ratified to support the hiring of the new sewer business manager, a gentleman, I forget his name. That was last week, I think.
Okay.
So, that's it.
All right, and I don't have any other committee reports. We may need to look at if Evan had any committees that we needed to reassign, but
He had a lot of committees.
yeah. But we can only do what we can do, I guess. So, all right. Actions and topics for future meetings. We're currently scheduled to be January 9th and January 23rd, and then we kind of probably enter budget season in full force. So is there anything we want to talk about on the 9th or the 23rd. I will put the budget season schedule on again. Anything else
When
that is?
Is Carter going to be presenting a budget in January? Preliminary budget?
Yeah, I think he normally does, is that?
Well, you had mentioned before, usually like to do it like third or fourth week in January.
Okay, I will, I will check with him on that, and maybe that comes out as part of the schedule that he's putting together right now. So, yep, good Ed. Anything else for anyone? All right. I do want to just, kind of tell the committee here that my work travel schedule is looking pretty ominous in the first quarter of 25. And we're only 5 members, so if 2 of us can't make a meeting, we can't have a meeting for quorum reasons. So
we need 3.
we need 4. We're a
4.
7-member body with only 5 people on it. So maybe part of that as well is if you have some friends who want to join the finance committee, we would welcome it. We did have 7 members last year, so we kind of ebb and flow, but for various reasons, folks leave. And the other thing I will say is that after this season, I am not going to be chair again next season. So I do need someone that's gonna maybe pick it up for next year.
Maybe we should send out a mailer like the sewer commission did for
You
members.
just nominate Jean because she's not here.
She's vice chair.
If I quit, she's chair, so that's kind of how I got the role, right? Okay. With that, any public comment from the public? Dave?
Sorry about that. I've had intended to get my camera and everything going ahead. To identify myself, Dave Passios, member of the Green Communities Committee, and presently resident of Jefferson, New Hampshire. If you want to understand that, give me a call. I'd just like to make a couple of quick comments in regards to stuff you guys talked about this evening during the Budget Committee's comments. Department of Local Services has a number of services that are available to all cities and towns in Massachusetts to do some of the work that has been mentioned as auditing the town's books. Probably take a little bit deeper look into what they offer. It's free, and the only thing that I'm aware of that would be required is a vote of the Board of Selectmen to ask them to come into town and do it. I never looked into exactly how deep they'd look, but I know it's deeper than what they did for financial policies, et cetera. So that's one thing I kind of noticed from the discussions that I had some knowledge of. The consolidation of accounts, personally, the only thing I caution there is any changes in the financial processes in the town of Lunenburg need to be thoroughly thought through. There may be a reason why there's redundancy in a few places over the years, and I don't know how many people remember, but we had some substantial thousands of dollars of loss in fraudulent invoices charged through the school system. I'm not pointing anybody out, but that's where that emanated from, and it was caught on the town side bookkeeping initially. So there may be some reasons for verification of invoices, et cetera, going from one department on the school side to the town side and back to the school side again. So just be aware of that. On the surface, it doesn't make sense, but it might if it's something that's a check and balance against fraud. Let's see. Lastly, I had one other thing that I had mentioned a couple of times before I left the committee, and that is that I really think somebody needs to take a hard look at the possibility of a local income tax. It's not a simple process to put it in place in Massachusetts because it has to start with the legislature. And the minute you say that, people say, oh, God, that's too much work. But you know, if you go through the steps and get it in place, there are some big pluses to it. And during the meeting, I sent a link to your chair via message. And if it didn't come through, Chris, let me know. I will get it to you. And it listed a number of states and towns across the country that do this, and the percentage is anywhere from 1 to, I think it's 10% actually in one state. And in some states, it's the program's administered by the state. The state taxes the income, and there's a definition of what income is taxable. And then it's drawn on by the towns, or depending on how the original legislation is formed or worded, the towns themselves are authorized through town meeting to do a local income tax, which one of the big pluses I saw to it was that it shifts the tax burden from your seniors, your low-income seniors and your low-income families trying to survive in Lunenburg by shifting some of the revenue burden that the town needs to operate from the value of the real estate to the value of the individual's incomes. Yeah, call it a millionaire's tax, call it whatever you want, but it accomplishes a goal that I think is would really help in many aspects of it.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Peter, you had your hand raised?
Yeah, thanks. It's like Finance Committee Old Home Week. So thank you for the opportunity to say a couple of words here. I'd like to comment a little bit on the report that we just heard from the Budget Task Force, and I think that we owe a debt of gratitude to all the participants of the Budget Task Force. I think that the work was good, but there are three things that you know I'd like to just offer some comment on relative to that work. First is it strikes me, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, you know, across all of these recommendations, the opportunities to lead and to change and adapt to meet our needs and to modernize over the last several years that for whatever reason we have missed and neglected. I just, it's good that we're bringing these things up now, but what have we been doing over the last several years? I'm just dumbfounded by it. The second is, now that we have this list, some of these items strike me as potentially interfering with other very high priority items and work processes that are already underway and frankly need to get dealt with and brought to fruition. So for example, the Municipal Building Committee and their work. If we are conflating CPA and a debt exclusion to deal with the municipal building problem, I worry that, you know, we could set ourselves back another 3 years and not accomplish anything. So my recommendation would be to prioritize the things that we can do that are going to have potentially the greatest impact, but also are not going to distract us or sideline us from other things that really need to get done in a very timely manner. The comments that were made about TC Passios a little bit earlier are very ominous to me, and we don't have even sufficient backup plans to deal with that building right now. And we've got to bring, particularly the municipal building project, we've got to make progress with that this year. But there are others in the schools that are right behind it that we also need to deal with. And I'm a little concerned that we're going to distract ourselves. The third is what brought us here. The reason why that committee was appointed, if you recall, was the budget crisis that we found ourselves in a little less than a year ago. And the person who spearheaded this committee, Selectman Emke, voted against recommending an override because she thought that this work needed to be done first, and that we needed to make sure that we were pursuing all potential avenues to make sure that we understood, do we have enough money to run the town or not, and what can we do to mitigate those gaps? And so I would like to bring us back to that question. Do we have enough money to run the town in FY26? Are there items on this list that are going to that can potentially have an impact to our budget and operations in FY26? I don't know, having listened to this presentation, if anything on that list is going to affect us for next year, and would affect a decision around an override or a debt exclusion or any other financial decision that we need to make for FY26. A lot of this, I think, could be substantial improvements over the course of years, and I think we should begin the process on a lot of them. But I'm very concerned about the upcoming budget year. I'm concerned about the predictions that we have for health insurance, which are higher than the predictions were last year at this time, and what are we going to do about it? And what has been discovered over the last 6 months is going to inform those decisions. And honestly, after all that work has been done, I remain with more questions than answers. But nevertheless, we have to run the town in FY26, and we have to make decisions in the next several months about how we're going to do that. So I think the work was good. I'm just not sure that it's getting us to where, to solving the problem that I was hoping we would get to when that process began. And then lastly, I said this on Wednesday night at school committee, the game here is Chapter 70, which there was a little bit of discussion about earlier about Project 211. We have got to solve that problem. When 40% of your school budget is coming from the state, but it is increasing at 0.5% a year, and your expenses are increasing at 4 to 5% a year, it is unsustainable. And we need to demand leadership from our legislators to solve this problem. I applaud Representative Scarsdale for her efforts, but this is going to require a public mandate. And so far, I have heard nothing from either of the other two members of our delegation. Our entire delegation has been invited to school board meetings. They have declined, and there has been no leadership in terms of building any kind of consensus or movement or proposal to actually go out and solve this problem. It is overdue, and I'm hopeful that it can be solved in calendar year 25, but I'm also very skeptical. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. Any additional public comment from the public? Any public comment from the board? All right. I will end on thanking everyone for the hard work. Maybe there's no silver bullet here, but I do think that good work went into it, and collectively, let's move forward. But with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor, say aye.
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 All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
That was a short one.